Hey there guys, I'm back to another game review. Today we're taking a look at The Last of Us Part 1, a remake of the 2013 critically acclaimed action-adventure title. Leading up to the release of the HBO adaptation, Naughty Dog wanted to give players the best possible way to re-experience their beloved title while charging $70. This remake enhances the visuals once more, but also makes more subtle gameplay changes to make it more in line with The Last of Us Part 2. Whether you've played The Last of Us before or this is your first time playing it, is this remake worth checking out? Let's talk about it.
I'm a massive fan of The Last of Us. I still remember playing it for the first time on my PlayStation 3 back in 2013 and absolutely falling in love with it. It's in my top 2 favorite games of all time. I've talked about the franchise before on this channel, including the PS4 remaster. So, when The Last of Us Part 1 was announced, I was confused. The remaster still holds up today, even on PS5 hardware. The graphics may not look the best and they're a bit outdated for 2024 standards, but it still runs fine. In addition, The Last of Us wasn't even 10 years old at that point to warrant a remake, and even if it was 10 years old, I would still be against it because of the existence of a remaster. On top of all of this, Naughty Dog and Sony would be charging $70 for the product, which really stung for general audiences. I understand the team had to go back in and rebuild the game from the ground up for the PlayStation 5, but even $50 would have been more reasonable. Still, the game was released in the fall of 2022 and received high praise for the PlayStation 5 version. It had a horrid release on PC with poor optimization issues. I'm not sure if those problems have been fixed, so be wary if that's your platform of choice. Now that I've played The Last of Us Part 1, what do I think of it? It's the definitive way to experience the game, but it isn't necessarily worth the $70 price tag. The story is the exact same with no changes whatsoever. Visually, this is the best The Last of Us has looked to date. The enhanced visuals, models, lighting, it's all stellar on the PlayStation 5. It makes the emotional beats of the story hit more, and transitioning between gameplay and cutscene seamless. Also, load times are nearly non-existent, as I still remember the extremely long loading screen for any Naughty Dog game on the PS3. I played on performance mode to get the 60 FPS experience, and I was overall pleased. Console gaming at 60 frames is a must in 2024. The gameplay is more or less the same as before. Explore each area for supplies as you get through waves of infected, hunters, and whatever else you may encounter in this post-apocalyptic world. Sneak around enemies to save supplies or start a gunfight to get it done quicker. You'll have plenty of tools to deal with your enemies, so don't be afraid to go wild every once in a while. Naughty Dog didn't add any crazy new features from Part 2, such as proning, as that would break some of the level design of Part 1. They did improve the enemy AI, so don't be surprised to get gunned down by hunters or have a bunch of infected swarm you at once. I was dying a lot because I was unaware they improved the enemy AI, which in turn increased the normal difficulty levels. I played The Last of Us a bunch of times at this point, so to have The Last of Us Part 1 trip me up like this was shocking. At the end of each human encounter, if the enemy is able to plead for their life, you'll have to execute them to finish the encounter. This is new for The Last of Us Part 1, as this was not in any prior version. Personally, I don't like this change. This reinforces the idea that quote-unquote Joel isn't the good guy, which makes the ending of the story less of a surprise to the player. I will never forget when I first finished The Last of Us in 2013, sitting in front of my TV just thinking about the ending. Like, oh my god, I just did that. I've been following this guy Joel the whole time, and no one in The Last of Us's world is good or bad. They're just trying to survive. To have the player purposefully execute the last human enemy at the end of each encounter was ham-fisted. It's almost like they didn't want the player to be surprised at the ending, which makes zero sense. I can see what Naughty Dog was trying to do here, but it didn't work. Another change they made was adding these animations whenever you upgrade your guns on the workbench. While they look cool and make sense thematically, they last way too long and bring the pace of the game down. I was dreading every single time I had to upgrade my weapons because I had to sit through a mini cutscene for each upgrade. Like, I get it. The gun is getting improved. We can move on with it. Same goes for picking up supplies. Does Joel have to physically pick up everything he comes across? It makes the presentation look better, but at the cost of the game's pacing. Also, the teammate AI did block me a few times during my playthrough, like when Ellie was just standing in this doorway, or when David literally got me killed by this bloater. I was so mad at the second one because I had to fight through the infected once more. All in all, The Last of Us Part 1 is a solid remake. Experience the game once more with the best graphics and improved enemy AI. Even if you've played The Last of Us before, the gameplay experience is slightly different because of how the enemies now behave. Don't be surprised to have a tougher time dealing with hunters and infected. The 60 FPS experience is great and is visually stunning for the console. There are some things that make this remake inferior to the original, such as upgrading guns and executing the last human in encounters. If you're willing to spend the extra cash for The Last of Us Part 1, then go for it. Otherwise, the PS4 remaster is still fine. You can bump it to 60 frames on the PS5 if you're okay with the upscaled PS4 graphics. Now that we live in a post The Last of Us HBO show world, should people play The Last of Us Part 1 first before viewing the show? I would say yes. I'm always of the believer of consuming the original source material before diving into any adaptation within reason. Obviously, many people have not read Marvel comics before diving into the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, but you hopefully understand my point. The HBO show is amazing, don't get me wrong. I'd even go as far as to say that this is the best way to experience the Last of Us story. But because it is so goddamn good in fleshing out its characters, world, and overall narrative, playing the game first is easier than trying to go back in afterwards. While I was playing The Last of Us Part 1, I was reminded of the changes the HBO show did, like making Joel's character more human or giving Bill and Frank a complete backstory in episode 3. Like I said earlier, within reason, everyone should play The Last of Us Part 1 before watching the show. You'll be able to pick up the changes more easily and appreciate both versions of The Last of Us more. Not everyone enjoys video games or even has the hardware to play them on. The Last of Us by HBO is the best way to enjoy The Last of Us story, but we should not forget where it all started.
Should you spend $70 on The Last of Us Part 1? No. But is it the best way to experience the Last of Us game? Absolutely. The improvements they brought on for this remake are amazing and the definitive way to play the game. However, it is completely fine to play the PS4 remaster on your PS5. It's cheaper, it's free on PlayStation Plus, and you can still run it on 60 frames per second. The visuals are nowhere near the remake, but it still looks okay. If you want to throw down the extra cash for the best experience visually, then you have to buy The Last of Us Part 1. I still think it's overpriced, which is why I bought it on Black Friday for $40. $50 at most is my price point. Do what you want with your money, but The Last of Us Part 1 is the best possible way to experience the first game. The remaster is still fine, it looks okay visually, but if you want the best experience possible, then you're gonna have to play The Last of Us Part 1. And yeah, that is my review. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys have not already, you can subscribe. I put new videos up on Saturdays. You can follow me on social media at TV Sonic Gaming. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at TV Sonic Gaming. And you can check out my podcast called The Travis and Damien Podcast. We talk about games, movies, and anime every other week. And yeah, that is all I have for today. Thank you guys for watching this video once again. And I'll see you guys next time with more videos.